An American firm commissioned report on Eskom's varied challenges is due to be released today, and its head office is in Sunninghill, Johannesburg. The utility company had commissioned the investigations back in 2015 on matters including causes of load shedding and delays in the company's infrastructure build program. Eskom chairperson Dr. Ben Ngubane is due to make a public findings of the report by Denton, which has been rumored to have been finalized a while back. Let's cut live to that briefing now.
By appointing a specialist firm which had had no recent professional assignments of this nature with Eskom. The board needed to get to the bottom of the following key issues: the poor performance of generation plant, Majuba silo collapse, Unit 3 at Duva, which was damaged, and general deterioration of plant availability. Delays in bringing the new generation plant on stream, high costs of primary energy, Eskom's financial challenges, the integrity of the procurement processes and compliance with legislation, as well as Eskom's procurement policies. Contract management, in particular cost escalations, frequent modifications, penalty costs, and Eskom's capacity to manage contracts in general. Security of national key points, these were the areas that were of utmost concern. The board then decided to get to the bottom of the crippling challenges by appointing a competent agency to assist with establishing the true facts. Thus, a multinational law firm, the world's largest firm measured by number of lawyers, and the world's sixth largest firm measured by 2015-2016 revenues, was appointed to undertake the fact-finding mission on the board's behalf. The appointment of Dentons to conduct the investigation followed a standard procurement process. The board looked for an independent company with enough gravitas and with resources to mobilize a suitable team locally and globally. Dentons had not previously worked for Eskom as a firm in South Africa, although some of the Dentons partners had rendered limited legal services to Eskom at previous legal firms. Dentons also enjoyed an extensive international network that would assist in the deployment of suitable resources. As part of this process, 4 executives were suspended. I would like to reiterate the fact that this was without prejudice and only to create an unfettered space for the fact-finding inquiry. Neither was the investigation established to be accusatory and substantiate their suspensions. The Dentons report was intrinsically the terms of reference for Eskom's turnaround, and we intended to keep it that way, to breathe new life into the business without upsetting an already sagging morale amongst employees. We committed, as you may recall, to make this report public. But at the time of completion in July 2015, the board considered that releasing the report would have exerted aggravated pressure on the already stressed business. Hence, a decision to rather use the report to recalibrate Eskom was taken by the board. Due to the fragility of Eskom at the time, which was defined by load shedding and an operational gap consequent to the key executives who had been suspended, the board made a well-considered decision to mainly utilize the report to fix the areas of concern in the business. However, due to the recent surge in interest, we have decided to release the report at this point to protect Eskom's interest and hope this briefing will assist in keeping this conversation within the purview of facts and less, if not zero, conjecture and unjustified innuendo. We have invited Mr. Kapti, the managing partner from Dentons, to join us in the proceedings in order to help us address all the issues about the report. Guided by specific terms of reference, Dentons conducted an inquiry into the status of the business challenges faced by the utility at the time. During the course of the fact-finding exercise, 2 iterations were produced by Dentons. I want to state it categorically that contrary to what has been reported by some media, both the board and I have never at any point during the course of the fact-finding exercise interfered with the investigation. We had an unvarnished interest to obtain the facts about the state of the business so as to inform the turnaround of the entity. Any act of interference would have been idiotic, to put it mildly. When the last version was presented to the board, we realized that the findings were not dissimilar to the areas of our own perceptions as a board. Put differently, Dentons helped to confirm our own initial suspicions of the problem areas. This being a resource-based expedition, we decided to stop the investigation so as to save further resources, which would otherwise be invested into a perpetual investigation. We didn't have the luxury of time and money to investigate interminably. Hence, we curtailed the investigation. I want to state with all possible human vehemence that we didn't curtail the investigation for nefarious reasons, other than what I've explained. We didn't want to spend further money on a matter that seemed to tally up with our own thoughts. Suggesting that the board tinkered with the findings isn't only a gratuitous insult to the individual members of the board, but to Dentons too. It is factually incorrect that Eskom paid an amount of 27 million rand towards the investigation. I want to instead put on record that we paid an amount of approximately 20 million, excluding VAT and disbursements. I want to mention that 24 multidisciplinary professionals, from legal, financial, engineering, to forensic specialists, participated in the fact-finding mission by Dentons. Further, top-end technology was rendered from the UK to assist with ferreting out the facts in line with the terms of reference. All these requirements could not have come at a cheaper price than the stated amount. Any fair criticism of this amount must be based on a reasonable benchmark. We as a board don't have regrets about the amount paid based on the immeasurable turnaround that has resulted from the entire exercise. Load shedding has made way for excess capacity. When Dentons presented his preliminary findings at a special board meeting, a decision was made to delegate the responsibility of oversight of the recommended improvements to the Audit and Risk Committee. The executive team was then tasked with the technical implementation under the strict supervision of the Audit and Risk Committee. A full implementation plan was then developed with clear targets and tightly monitored milestones that were incorporated into the turnaround strategy presented to the Minister of Public Enterprises and the Minister of Finance, as this formed part of the conditions relating to the equity injection provided by government to Eskom. By November 2016, 13 out of 18 recommendations had already been fully implemented and closed. The balance of these are in advanced stages of implementation. There is no competent measure for the net impact of the Dentons report. As you can see from the slide, is the slide on? Okay. Anyway, the resultant benefits include an electricity available factor of 75.6% in December 2016, as compared to an EAF of 67.9% in December 2014. Excess capacity of 5,600 megawatts as opposed to continued load shedding. New build delivering ahead of schedule, contributing in excess of 2,000 megawatts. Significant improvement in profitability of the company as measured by EBITDA performance. 86% of the funding for 2016-17 financial year has already been secured, which allowed the auditors to remove the emphasis of matter qualification from their audit report relating to going concern. I'd hope that we'll get a slide here just to show the gains that have been made in terms of implementing the recommendations by Dentons. As I conclude, I also want to mention the fact that Denton's investigation did not seek to substantiate the suspension of the 4 executives. It was simply not part of the terms of reference. While I accept that differences of opinion will always exist among people, I believe fair-minded people are bound to extend credit to the Eskom board for the sterling work done thus far. We both stabilized and set in sustainable motion an entity which faced near implosion. In fact, the previous CEO had stated that South Africa faced the reality of a national blackout. We stopped that. It is this board that has ensured that Eskom remains the quintessential oil that greases the wheels of the South African economy. We will be releasing the report to the following parties who have requested the report: the South African History Archive, SAHA, Peter Louis Maybeck, Natasha Wendy Anita Mazone, Nicholas Edward Blom. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Chairman. For some of the very important points that we're seeking to put out to the public, he has referred to a representative from Dentons, the Managing Director, Mr. Noor Gabdi. I would like to welcome him at this point.
Thank you very much and good morning. I am Noor Gabdi. I'm the managing partner of Dentons in South Africa. I have been asked by my client, Eskom, who commissioned us to conduct this investigation, to share with you, to share with the media and the public at large, 2 things: the process of this investigation and how it ensued. So, Dentons was appointed after a rigorous RFP process where I understand Eskom had sought the services of companies who had not had previous work and or experience dealing with the management and or the executive committee for purposes that's obvious, to conduct this investigation. Now, while some of our practitioners in the firm in other firms, had experience of the Eskom organization, the firm Dentons itself had not previously worked for Eskom. To that extent, we were completely independent. And the brief, in short, was to assemble a team that looked at 4 disciplines, 3 disciplines principally. Legal, obviously, engineering, so it would have been the strong electrical engineering and broader engineering expertise, as well as financial. Through the extensive network that Denton's enjoyed as the largest firm in the world today by number, 145 locations, certainly the largest energy practice in the world, we were comfortable that we would be able to identify and recruit the resources to support this, whether those resources were legal or through partnerships through various organizations. The terms of reference, I think, is also important for me to share with you this morning. Terms of reference was specified by our client. Now, our client, for all intents and purposes, was the Audit and Risk Committee of the board, who briefed us, who developed the terms of reference, and with whom we had interaction throughout the course of our investigation. And the areas that we were to look at was, I think, had been previously stated by Dr. Ngubane, the poor performance of Eskom's generation plant at the time, the delays in bringing the new generation plant on stream, and you will know there was much, there was a lot of concern around the delay of the new builds, the high cost of primary energy. At the time, you will recall that there were significant diesel purchases, and that were costly. Eskom's financial challenges, which directly and indirectly would have been related to some of these preceding aspects. Of course, important was also Eskom's procurement processes, its compliance with legislation and policies, and its contract management capability. Its capacity to manage contracts specifically as well generally. And very importantly, the security failures and accountability at Eskom as a national strategic key point. Now, you know, you may have heard in the news that there are iterations of a report which is in possession of members of the public. This clearly is a breach of that security, or at least an aspect of the breach of that security. So clearly it's a problem. Information was secured illegally in certain cases. This was a problem for the board, and we were asked to investigate how this was possible and what those conduits for dispersal of information was. The methodology that we had adopted and presented to ARC and the board, and that they accepted, was that, I mean, it's a huge organization. An investigation like this could arguably go on for very many years. But we confined it to conducting interviews with employees, ex-employees, directors, in certain cases ex-directors, suppliers, functionaries in the business, executives, and others. We obtained, and we had to analyze minutes, letters, documentation, as well as in certain cases emails. And we needed to determine the bona fides of allegations which arose as part of the interview. So you can well imagine that we had spoken, as we were required to several parties, several of them disaffected. Several of them disaffected for a number of reasons, and they were useful in providing information, and we needed to follow up on several of those allegations. Let's understand at that point they remain allegations until, of course, they corroborated. So the extensive review of documents that related to the board and the board committees, and of course previous board and the management committee, was done to investigate and test the integrity of how the information flowed through Eskom structures. We thought that this was important, so that there was a coherence to what the integrity of what the board was doing and what the organization was doing. In addition, there were, as I've mentioned, interviews with a wide-ranging group of people, some of them disaffected. Now, we had prepared an interim report which was presented to the Audit and Risk Committee. The investigation the report was presented by myself and my co-chair, so Advocate Dumisa and Zabeza co-chaired this investigation, and then the reason for that was really to ensure that there was independence and peer review of the methodology that was followed and the mobilization of the team. The team was a team of 24 professionals, mostly from South Africa, included organizations like ESP Consulting, Morar Incorporated, Strauss Friedberg, an international forensics company that we worked with, and a series of other local law firms that had specialist expertise in, for example, criminal law, criminal investigation, and forensic investigation. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my way with the technology, and I did not move along, so perhaps I should do that. Sorry, sorry, I was hoping somebody would alert me. Am I? Yeah. So, okay. So then, to deal with the report, we presented the draft preliminary report. The board was of the view that the information in this report had realized their objectives in terms of the terms of reference. We had suggested that there were several areas that in our view should have and could have been further investigated. You see, as an investigation matures, so information is either corroborated or you seek further information to corroborate the investigation, the information. And we felt that this was something that the board should consider. The board, of course, was I think, directed by its terms of reference. And they were of the view that the information in the preliminary report realized their objectives and that there was no need to continue the investigation. We understood from them that they thought that further investigation would amount to fruitless and wasteful expenditure. I guess the client would direct that. We advised the board that much of the information and allegations, and particularly by disaffected parties, we were not able to corroborate. Now the challenge, of course, with this is that when we were asked to finalize the report, there was information pertaining to persons that would be imprudent for us to refer to in the report. Having said that, the preliminary report was presented to the board. The final report certainly would not be suitable, legally prudent, to publish names where the evidence was not sufficiently tested, in our opinion. The suggestion, and I refer here to some of the recent media reports about interference in the report. I think it's ludicrous. Firstly, we never had the opportunity to work with the chair. At all material times, our instructions came from the chair of the Audit and the Risk Committee, and at all material times, we met with the full committee. So when full committee was not available, a meeting would not proceed in instances where there was a need for such meeting. Also, I'm about to say this, maybe not too excited, that no, it didn't cost 27 million, it was only 20 million. But again, as you can understand, there were 24 professionals from different disciplines working often 16 hours a day, trying to get this work done and this report and the analysis of the information up to date so that we could present it. We've heard that the board decided that they could implement some of the recommendations that we were able to make at that time and at that level of maturity of the report. I'm not suggesting that there were other recommendations, but it was likely that we would have been able to make further findings and other recommendations. that was not the course. What was in fact communicated to us was that, and it's in italics, what was presented to the board was sufficient to inform the turnaround strategy of Eskom. Now, I thought it was important that you hear from Dentons what our role was in this, how we went about, what our methodology was. I had, I guess, in consultation with the group legal advisor and the CE, acting CE, asked that if necessary, we be given this opportunity to today share with you what our role was. Also, just on a point of correction, we're not a US law firm. Dentons is a polycentric law firm. In South Africa, we are South African. So, we're, not that there's anything wrong with being a US law firm. So, yeah, I guess that is my presentation, Chair. If there's anything. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This is, ladies and gentlemen, a fervent effort from our side to actually tell our story. It's important that we do this because we wish for
Well, we seem to have lost the audio there. We had visuals live from Eskom's press briefing where we were hearing from Ben Ngubane, the Eskom chairperson, just giving some details regarding a report issued by Dentons regarding Eskom's challenges. I think we might have our audio back. Let's go back to the press conference. Okay, we're still working on that audio for you. We were live at the press briefing with Ben Ngubane, the Eskom chairperson, just giving some details regarding the mandate that was given to Dentons. We thought it was an American firm, but it's just been confirmed that it actually is a South African firm, a polycentric South African law firm called Dentons that was investigating Eskom's various challenges, and that came up with a report regarding the different challenges and made some recommendations on how it feels Eskom should deal with it. Now, Mr. Ngubane mentioned that some of the things that were being investigated were the integrity of Eskom's procurement processes, Eskom's financial capacity, as well as Eskom's capacity to handle contracts, amongst many other things, such as the blackouts or the load shedding that Eskom had to carry out in the year 2016 and 2015 as well. Mr. Ngubane mentioned that 4 executives were suspended during the course of the fact-finding process, that part of the investigation. He mentioned, though, that the report wasn't put together in order to try and victimize people to get them suspended, but that the suspensions came as a result of some findings that surfaced during the investigation process by Dentons. He also mentioned that contrary to popular belief, Eskom only spent 20 million rands, excluding VAT and disbursements on paying for this investigation to be carried out. Now, an executive representative of Dentons, South African firm, was just going through the processes that they carried out in investigating the different items that were listed as challenges by Eskom. He mentioned that they worked independently. He mentioned that they were not influenced by the board at all, and just how they came to the conclusions and recommendations that they reached. Well, it's time now for a bit of business news. Anglo American Platinum expects its profits for the year ended 2016 to surge by 20% despite impairments on its earnings. The company says its headline earnings for the 2016 financial year were expected to increase to between 1.64 billion rands and 2 billion rands from the 107 million rands reported in the comparative period. The headline earnings per share expected to increase to between 625 cents and 760 cents a share in the period, from just 41 cents in the corresponding period. A new species of armyworm could be disastrous for South Africa's crops, especially maize, if not urgently contained. For many South African citizens, maize is a staple food, accounting for 30% to 50% of low-income households. The Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries says the species could cause extensive damage to sweet corn and white maize planted for seed production. DRD Gold shares slid nearly 7% at one stage on Monday after the group announced that it expected its earnings per share to decline between 76% and 96% for the 6 months to end December. The group says the earnings per share would now be expected to be between 0.17 cents and 1.03 cents per share, as compared to the 4.3 cents per share in 2015. It also expects a headline loss per share to be between 2.66 and 2.14 cents per share, compared to headline earnings of 2.6 cents per share in the year 2015. We'll have our audio back from the Eskom press conference. Let's cut back live to it.
You said that you were ahead of schedule on your new build program, but the first generating set at Medupi came in 5 years late on the original schedule that was set out, what, 8, 9, 10 years ago? So which schedule are you referring to when you say that you are now ahead of it? Thank you.
Good morning, Chris Yelland from EE Publishers. Can Mr. Kapti indicate, and also Suzanne Daniels perhaps indicate, are you releasing this to the public, or are you only releasing this to people who've made prior applications? I had heard that the DA had made a prior application. They did say that publicly. I'm not sure whether they finally did, but they did indicate their intention to make a prior application. Did the DA make an application, and will they receive the report? And will we, as the media, be able to receive a report? And if so, which report will it be? The first, the second, or the third iteration? Will it be redacted with names, or will it be the full report? The initial report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think Mr. Kapti will actually help us with the first question, which talks about the sanitization in inverted brackets. I think I will ask the CEO actually to come and talk about the Medupi question, unless the chairperson wants to have a go at that. Okay. The prior application, I think Ms. Dania has actually provided a response in respect of that question, but I think we're still going to proceed and actually try and clarify it. Okay, thank you.
The issue of disbursements, I think, would be best answered by the CFO.
Thank you, sir. On the issue of disbursements, I'm in position of statement all the disbursements paid to us, and they were out of credits past, was 1,425,000 rand. Now, the second aspect of the question dealt with whether or not there was a previous report and whether or not the report was sanitized. So there is only one report. There was an iteration, obviously, as the investigation matures, some of the information is found to be baseless allegations, some of it remains uncorroborated, and as I said earlier, we were not comfortable that, we thought it was imprudent where information was not corroborated sufficiently. There was insufficient evidence for us to be able to include that in the report that we presented to the client. I think that the use of the word sanitize is disingenuous. You don't do that to investigative reports. I think as the investigation matures, information is confirmed, corroborated, or left out because they are unsubstantiated. I hope that
that responds adequately to the question, but there certainly was no sanitization in the way that I think has come across more recently in the media. That would be unfair to suggest.
Yes. Issue of this schedule. Well, when we came in, there were huge claims because of not meeting the schedule on time by almost all the contractors. It was an issue that was investigated by, Gabdi and his colleagues, and the issue of management of contracts changed. The head of Group Capital, Mr. Masango, established a new system, a steering committee with Mitsubishi, Hitachi, and with all the contractors. They brought in extra expertise and so on. So we did catch up. Not completely, obviously, but we would have delayed even longer if this had not happened, that recommendations are made on how to manage contracts, how to deal with claims, and so on. Well, there are issues, of course, of force majeure, sure, which cause a number of delays. But what I'm saying, from the projected further delays, we cut back. And that's why Medupi could be launched. That's why Kusile now has got a unit that is already on fire. That's why Ingula was brought forward. So there were a lot of hastening of the schedule. But I'll ask the interim CEO to deal with that.
Thank you, Chair. You will recall that the first business case of Medupi and Kusile was approved in 2007. And 7 years later, this board was appointed. And 3 months after this board was appointed in March, the 2 executive directors were appointed. So there was a legacy issues. There was nothing this board can do. It's water under the bridge. What the board did, the new board did with the new group, with new executive director, was to re-baseline the schedules of all rail programs, Medupi, Kusile, and Ingula. And it is those re-baseline schedules that the projects are currently delivering ahead of. That's correct. You can't change the past. You can't change the past, but the future you can control. Yeah, but yeah.
Okay. Suzanne?
To answer the question, I can confirm, Mr. Yelland, that Natasha Wendy Anita Mazzoni applied for a copy of the Denton's report in terms of fire. And she is a well-known representative for the Democratic Alliance. Insofar as we're releasing to the public, you will appreciate that in terms of the Act, any member of the public can request that report. And to the extent that it's within the framework of the Act, we will consider the merits of the application and we will respond accordingly. The final report, as accepted by the Audit and Risk Committee and the Board of Eskom, will be the report that we will be using in the release process. As you will recall from my earlier confirmation, there are names of individuals in that report, and they are third parties other than Eskom employees and functionaries, and I think that they do need to be afforded the opportunity to first consider the report insofar as it affects them, and you will see that the report that is provided will have those names blacklined so that we can issue the necessary notices to the individual.
Thank you. Maybe as a point of emphasis, Chris, when this decision was made to actually release the report, initially it was to do so in its raw form and simply actually put it up on the website. However, we're compelled by certain things to ensure that all the blind spots are visible to us. So we needed to consult and do all the necessary stuff that an organization that is led will do. So part of what we advised them to do, and this is not actually even, we're not excited about this particular process, not at all, because we wanted to actually put the report on the table so that South Africans can see, because so far it appears there's something that is being hidden. There isn't anything, except for the individuals mentioned and institutions, as well as competitor-sensitive information. This report would be on the table today. We had to consult, we had to protect the interests of the organization and individuals and institutions. So as we stand here, we're being totally open with you. This is the only way we can make it possible to you in respect of what we have received from those that advise us. Let's take another 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ngubane, for this opportunity to talk about the report. However, I'd like to perhaps consider what you have not said about the report and the process to put it together. First, our colleague there says it would be on the table right now if there were not these considerations to make. You have had 2 years to make these considerations after you had initially offered and volunteered to publish a report before the investigation. Surely the people of South Africa deserve better. 1. My second question, you've just said there are 2 iterations of the report. What happened to the 3rd iteration? What happened to the 3rd one, Mbomvu? The 3rd iteration, sir? And I can repeat myself, sir, if you're not getting me. And your board in March 2015, on the 11th, decided that the Audit and Risk Committee would handle this whole process. And the first presentation was made to the board, not by Mr. Kapti, but by another colleague of his. If you published that interim report that was presented, would you and many of your colleagues at the executive committee and on the board still be sitting there today? The question is, if you published that interim report that was presented to the audit committee, would yourself and many of your past and current colleagues on the board and on the executive committee be today sitting here at Eskom? The 3rd question, sir.
Can I interject that? I will take you on the next round. Can we pause that, please?
Hi, my name is Kabelo Kumalo from Business Report. My question is directed to Denton. You mentioned that there were areas in the interim report that you felt needed further investigation. So I just wanted to find out which areas are those and how strongly did you feel about the board not heeding your call for further investigation? Thank you.
I think let's pause there. We're gonna come to, I think we have quite a handful of questions to deal with already. So I think we're gonna have the first question actually answered by the chairperson. And then Mr. Kapti is gonna help us with the question around iterations.
Well, you know, probably you don't remember the state of Eskom when we came on board. It was clear that something seriously wrong was happening. It wasn't a miracle that the station started working well, that we had enough reserve of power. It was because of the work that was done in association with Dentons, who identified for us, for instance, the issue of performance agreements with station managers, with personnel there. There were no performance agreements in place. You know, I can count a number of errors and mishaps and so on. We had to make a trade-off. We either dealt with what was going wrong, or we would carry out with a prolonged investigation of a number of allegations, carry on demoralizing the staff. We chose the other. We said, let's try and fix this thing. By the time Brian came here, I mean, we were already on the way there. He helped us with his expertise and so on, but the recommendations were already being considered by ARC and implemented. At times in life, you have to make trade-offs. Countries are not run on a linear scale. It's quadratic most of the time. It's cubic most of the time. It's not a straightforward equation. So we had to make trade-offs and say, we are not going to be seen to be accusing everyone in the organization. We are going to try and implement the recommendations and get it right.
Maybe before Mr. Kapti actually proceeds, I just want to add to this point, because your question is about 2 years, it's not released, and now we're saying that it will be on the table. Dr. Ngubane is correct. I think it's actually, you know, it's reasonable for leadership to actually make those kinds of compromises. At a time when this report was actually presented, the organization was quite fragile. There was load shedding, key executives had been suspended. So now releasing that report to the public and igniting a particular sentiment, internal and external, was going to actually, at a time when the organization was actually, you know, was actually not looking good, was going to further demoralize, you know, the employees and actually further hurt the organization. So hence, Dr. Ngubane is saying they decided to implement the report, rather strengthen the business and then consider any other things beyond that particular point. Mr. Kapti.
Thank you. So allow me to confirm that there are not 3 iterations of the report. Firstly, but what does concern me is that this information was obviously privileged and confidential, and it seems as if that there was a sharing of some form of information which directs your questions, which clearly is illegal and inappropriate. Having said that, there were several presentations, and those presentations related to the state of the investigation. They were not necessarily reports. There was a preliminary draft report, and then, of course, that is the one that was finalized after we were advised that this is adequate, this is sufficient. Now, there was an executive summary of the report that was also tabled, and that is, I think, what you may be referring to, but certainly it is the same report, an executive summary, the interim report that was in draft form that was then finalized. The question relating to would there be areas that we feel we should have, if I understood the question correctly, areas of investigation that we feel we should have been afforded the opportunity to continue to dig, there would always be. In these circumstances, there were a number of disaffected people. There were a number of discrepancies, and the report remains subject to some measure of embargo until released. So I'm not going to go into the detail of the report itself, but in the nature of any investigation, On the one hand, an investigation is as long as a piece of string. On the other hand, you do need to be thorough about that investigation to ensure that you have substantiated the allegations that were made. When we presented that interim draft report and were told, look, this is fine for us, we're happy with this, it stopped being a draft report. It stopped being interim, it became the report. Now, are we entirely satisfied with it as investigators? I guess you never are. Is the client satisfied that they have the kind of information for which they set out to commission the report? Evidently so. So that's my response. I mean, which areas specifically? Quite frankly, all areas. It was an intense but short investigation. Just to go back, it commenced on the 20th of April in 2015. And if you look at the terms of reference and the extent of the terms of reference, we on the 11th of June, we prepared a presentation, and I think that is what you may be referring to when I wasn't present. It was delivered by my partner, and I think Advocate Nzebeza may have been present at the presentation of the update of the investigation, not a report. So, yeah.
Thank you. Mhlekazi, I will come back to you. We just need to take the dial-ins. There's a particular protocol about them, so I can't break that. Let's hear from the dial-ins.
We have no questions on the line.
Yeah, I have one. Paul Burkhardt from Bloomberg News. For Denton's, you mentioned that there were issues that you at least had the instinct to continue to investigate, but felt satisfied overall. Has there been information in the last 2 years that would cause you to believe that you should maybe more strongly investigate some of those outstanding questions? Thanks.
Okay, no, proceed. Next slide, please.
Philip de Wet from the Mail and Guardian, again back here, gentlemen. Dr. Ngubane, you're telling us, back here, if you look straight ahead, hi. You're telling us that as of mid-2015, you felt that there was certain information that was too dangerous to release to the public. And this seems to be a philosophy that you are quite comfortable with. Does that mean that there are contemporaneous matters that you feel should be withheld from the public? Would you go so far as to mislead the public if you thought it was in the best interests of Eskom? Is this a pattern of behavior that we should expect from this organization while you're in the chair? And then Ms. Daniels, it's quite clear that you're going to entertain PIA applications for this final report now. Will you in similar fashion entertain PIA requests for the executive summary, for the interim draft report, and for the presentation as it was presented to the board?
Okay, I think let's pause. Chair?
No, I think your inference, MNG, is absolutely wrong. I told you that we made a trade-off, or we accepted a trade-off. Fix the organization as quickly as possible, or drag out the investigation. Some of the issues which had not been corroborated, it wasn't hiding any information. And I say, and I've said our trade-off paid off for the country and for Eskom, because we used the recommendations to implement a turnaround strategy. So, Ms. Daniels has made it clear, and I think Mr. Kabdi himself, you cannot just go and publish people's names or companies willy-nilly, just because someone has made an allegation about that. You cannot. I mean, and in any case, remember that Mr. Tsotsi said time and again that this was not an accusatory process, that in fact it was a fact-finding process. When he proposed the suspension of the executives, he stated very clearly that there was nothing wrong that was being found or suspected. It was an information gathering. So the issue that I would hold information unnecessarily from the public is not true. As I said, we are implementing the recommendations. We are at recommendation 13. The rest of the 5 remaining deal mainly with security. There is nothing that stops us from asking Denton to evaluate how far the implementation has succeeded and how the remaining recommendations could be speeded up and secured. We haven't discussed that. As I say, it's 2 years now. We have not finished implementing all of them. We have implemented some because now we have got lights fully implemented, but we are still working on it. So 2 years in an exercise like this is not a significant amount of time. We will leave this place with still many other issues to be investigated because it's such a huge organization.
Thank you, Chair. So, Ms. Daniels?
As I had emphasized earlier, Eskom has decided to handle the interest in the Denton report within the PIA process, and each request will be considered within the framework provided by that Act. So the application can contain the request for the executive summary, and I see the presentation to the board, and we will respond within the framework of the Act. We consider it and respond accordingly on the advice of the legal team.
Thank you. Hlekazi, ngizothi ukumisa nje kancane that I just want to make sure that others get it. I'll certainly make sure I come back to you.
Dr. Ngubane, my name is Morafi Tabane from the SABC. Going back to the money that was paid to Denton, you said that it was approximately 20 million rand, excluding VAT. In total, exactly how much was paid? The total cost.
Okay.
As far as I know, we paid somewhere around 20 million, but he has got the list of payments, so probably we can ask him that question.
Exactly how much was it, sir?
Okay, let's handle it this way. Let's take a further 2 questions. We're going to get an answer for you. Okay. Any further questions? There is someone over there.
Good day. My name is Giovanni Majani from ANN7. My questions are into the probe that led to load shedding in 2008. Has this been completed and handed to the Public Enterprise Minister since she was the one who contradicted it? Second question is, last year, Chairman, you had indicated that Eskom was using reports and recommendations to fix what is wrong. Can you just give us a time frame? Because you did say that 2 years is not enough. Can you just give us a time frame on that?
I didn't get the first question.
The first question is the probe into what led to the load shedding in 2008. Is that complete? And has it been handed off to the Public Enterprise Minister since she was the one who contradicted this?
Okay. Let's take one last question on this round, I think.
Chris Yelland, EE Publishers again. Eskom chairman indicated 2 years ago that this report would be made public. And the matter was raised at the last Eskom media briefing not long ago, a few weeks ago. So this process has been ongoing for close on 2 years. Is it a coincidence that this media briefing is taking place today, the day before an article is due to be published in Financial Mail? Is this a preemptive action similar to the preemptive action that was taken before carte blanche expose on the 585 million rand to get a prepayment. Is this just a preemptive action, or are you really taking us into your confidence? Thank you.
Let me just take the last one very quickly, Chair. We committed that, as it has been the case, that we're going to maintain the same posture of telling even things that may not be flattering of ourselves. This press conference was called because we needed to take South Africans into the confidence of the leadership relative to the Denton's report. We're not aware of a publication of sort that is going to emerge sometime this week. We have no way of knowing. We don't know. So then the timing immediately is challenged by the fact that we're supposed to know something. Well,
No. You know, I've said, sitting on this platform, when my journalist friend asked me about this report, I've said we are implementing recommendations. They made recommendations. We saw those as being very helpful. So I've never indicated that that's the end of everything, you know. But then he raises issues in Financial Mail about me and so on, you know, very painful things when such things are said about you, and you know that you haven't done anything, because otherwise you'd be charging me or doing whatever. So we ultimately said, look, we have said we're implementing this, but it seems it's not enough. It seems there's some information that someone has that we are misleading the people. So let's call a conference and explain, put our point of view. So it's not preemptive at all. I'm sure tomorrow you'll be writing more painful things about me. I'm in public life. That's the risk one takes if you are in public life. You will be called names, stories will be created, because there are different interests in the country. I've been in public life now from 1994 in the first Mandela government. I worked very well with my president. I worked very well with President Thabo Mbeki. He even asked me to go to a very important country, Japan, to represent South Africa. While I was there, the emperor gave me an award which is hardly ever given to any foreigner, the Grand Cordon of the Order of the Rising Sun. I received it from the emperor himself for the work that had been done there. So I get hurt when people pull stuff, unrelated things. I was in the IFP 19 whatever. I didn't go out to fight for the country. How does he know all that? How does he know what I did at Codesa to ensure peace, a peaceful transition for this country? As the president knows my role in this country. So it's not preemptive. We're just saying, let's share now the concerns of the society and let's give them our side of the story.
Thank you, Chair. I think there are two more questions for you, Chair. I think Yes.
Well, look, as I said 2 years ago, well, this is the second year rather, we are in the process of implementing. In fact, in our meetings, we have discussed getting Dentons to come back and evaluate the effectiveness of the implementation, because we want to leave behind an organization that is stable, that is working. It's critical to the economy of this country. Right now, we are talking to the high-intensity energy users, saying that you pull back from your economic production because of the problems. Now we have got excess capacity, and we're going to have even more excess capacity. Can you some way restart those ports in your smelters that you had shut down? Because the country needs it. The country needs jobs. So we're doing all sorts of things as part of the recommendations. So I can't say we'll be finished in 6 months' time. The security issues are quite serious in this organization. And we have not completed that part. So hopefully, by the time our term ends in December, we will have done as much as possible. And hopefully, Dentons will still be our partner in trying to implement the recommendations. Oh yeah, the investigation on load shedding, these reports were commissioned before our time. Government has it. You know, there was a clear indication that had new build happened earlier, we would not have the crisis that started in 2008. I cannot say more than that, because that the government will have to talk about that issue.
Yes, Suzanne, on the figure, the actual amount for
Thank you. I think the two questions, the actual amount, and there was a question earlier that gentleman asked. So let me deal with the actual amount, inclusive of VAT, would be 19,467,000 and 450 rand and 82 cents. That's what we got paid.
Thank you.
Now, there was a, sorry.
Oh, sorry,
there was
sorry.
an earlier question that I think wasn't answered, and I think it's an important question at least. Okay. So the gentleman asked during the course of 2 years whether or not there were instances that we felt had to be further investigated. Am I correct to?
Since the report, yes. That the unanswered questions that you had after the preliminary report that you were able to leave behind at that time, that in the last 2 years, that events may have connected somehow.
Yeah, look, undoubtedly, I mean, in the nature of the public discourse around Eskom, when one is exposed to a lot of information in the media, and given the fact that one had worked pretty closely with the investigation, there were points of contact that I think I certainly would have found very interesting to further investigate. So absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you. I think that's...
Thank you. Dr. Ngubane, I asked you a question which you, with respect, said did not answer. You spoke about trade-offs when I asked, had that interim report been presented and published, would many of the people sitting on that platform and in this organization still be here today? You spoke about trade-offs that Eskom had to do. Can you tell the people of South Africa that you chose to leave the people that had been accused, whether or not there's any substance to those allegations that were made? You left them there untouched, and you carried on and fixed Eskom, implementing these recommendations of Denton's, with them still in charge. That's question one. Question two, sir.
Sorry, can we answer that question? First of all, I wish you could tell me exactly what was in the report you are talking about. Because if I say you are a cattle thief, will someone take action about that unless I have proof of it? The trouble is, that was not a report. It was an iteration that they were having in the process of investigation. He has made it clear he could not find corroboration on a number of allegations. So what do you expect us to do? To charge people when in fact we can't prove anything? I mean, really, can it be so? But can you answer that?
Yes, sorry, Chair. Thanks, Chair. I think it's important that we get Mr. Kapti again to actually just crystallize this, because we may be quibbling on these various reports that supposedly should be official ones. and we're actually losing the conversation. My understanding is that the report, as it is requested through PAJA, the one that we are all about here, is the only official report. So that report is being made public, subject to obviously what Ms. Daniel has explained. But I think if you can actually just explain to us, we need to deal with this question of too many reports that are competing for the same status with the report that we understand was presented to us.
There is no unofficial report. So let me start by saying that there are several presentations that were made. There was a draft preliminary report that resulted from that. There was an executive summary. Based on the draft preliminary report and our request to further investigate, and the client informing us that they were comfortable with the contents of the draft report, we finalized the report. So there are not 2 or 3 or 4 reports. And I think that there are probably levels of maturity of the report. And so it may very well be that the finalized report may have information in it which was not in the earlier draft, and or would have information removed for the reasons that I had stated. There were several instances where we could not, and this is quite important, and I think I want to correct the chair, we could not find information. We did not find information. But that does not suggest that the further investigation would not have lifted that information. And I think that's important to understand. And that is what we had proposed or suggested to the client. And of course, we act on instructions. So, and I hope that clarifies it. There's no one report dealing with one set of facts, another report dealing with another set of facts. There was one that we believed was prudent as a final report because it would not stand up legally. They were based on allegations that remained uncorroborated at the time that the investigation was completed.
Can I carry on, sir?
Yes, Mr.
Thank you. Dr. Ngubane, the people of South Africa certainly do remember the past. For 2 years, you have been sitting on that chair and telling the people of South Africa that the report is complete and that Eskom is implementing it. It took Lynn Brown sitting on the 3rd chair where Mr. Khoza is sitting to say the report is useless, is unusable. The board that you chair decided that Denton's had done enough, you have had enough. Let them present the report. Today you are asking the people of South Africa to believe you when you say the report contained things that could be implemented, which Lynn Brown said is unusable. And she actually used the word is inadequate for usage by Eskom. That's my first question, sir, if you will allow me to just ask them at once before the mic gets taken away from you again. Ms. Vinette Klein, you, together with the board, collected the interim report, and the board's resolution was that it should be collected and destroyed. Susan Daniels today is talking about legal opinion in making the final report accessible to the public. I have not seen anything that the board relied on in terms of legal advice to collect that information, which had untested allegations, because Denton was asked to stop the investigation. No legal opinion was sought by the board, as far as I'm aware, on whether that interim report could be destroyed. That was in a meeting, ma'am, on the 14th of July, where you volunteered to make sure that all the reports would be collected and destroyed. That is what Eskom says. Now, with respect, Dr. Ngubane, you have been saying for 2 years, I repeat, that the report is complete. Lynn Brown said once that the report is useless. And Eskom, just like Mr. Kabdi has just said, they receive instructions from the client, and the client, being the Eskom board, said, stop the investigation. Why did it perhaps the client find it necessary to investigate anything, or is there any plan to carry on with that Denton's investigation? That's one question. If you will allow me, sir, I'll carry on. Well, you called us to have a conversation, sir. I'm taking you up on the offer to have a conversation, if you don't mind. Thank you. In the 2 years, sir, going to why we don't have load shedding today, Machela Koko answered that with one line the week we were here, and he said there's no demand. So that is really fixed. Your board came in and exactly on the 3rd month decided it should suspend all these people because, yes, of course, you were not chairman at the time. You came in with this board in December with only 2 members. Was the period from the 20th of April at the start of the investigation to the 2nd or 3rd of July, where Denton's presented, was that period sufficient for the whole board of Eskom to know that there's nothing new in this investigation that they don't know, and they had just come in and were on their 2nd or 3rd meeting of the board? Was that enough of a time for the board to know what was in the investigation and what had been in the previous executive risk register? I shall ask a few more questions, sir. Lynn Brown sat there and I asked her a direct question. Do you have confidence in this board that is headed by your chairman, Ben Ngubane? She did not answer that particular question. Does it worry you that everywhere you go, sir, in the state-owned companies, yes, you're going to tell us about the Land Bank, great achievements. Let's talk about Eskom and the SABC, where your fitness to hold office is probably under discussion in Parliament as we speak. Do you think today, having sat here and told people of South Africa for 2 years that the investigation is complete and all is well, to now suddenly turn back and say the investigation was incomplete, do you think any person in this country should believe what you say?
Let's start with that one. We marked the findings in terms of what was useful for the turnaround. There was an agency towards creating a turnaround that would be credible to the war room, to our ministry, DPE, and to the stakeholders that we work with. And we decided, when you get the report, you will see how much work Denton's did in that 3 months. It answered a lot of questions in terms of why we were in the state that we were. Now, we decided to handle that. As I said, it was a trade-off. We could have carried on for, say, for a year or even 2 years with the investigation. We could have done that, but it wouldn't have helped us to turn the organization around. We had information that would help us do that. The minister did not say the report was inadequate. She said there were people's names in that report. But surely, now let's just look at it. We had load shedding. Hasn't that changed? The company was depleted of financial resources. In December 2014, Mr. Tsotsi and Mr. Matona phoned the minister at a Boxing Day to say they will not have enough money to pay salaries and suppliers. That was December 2014. You can check the books. We came in, we got Denton's, they brought in financial experts, financial gurus. Today, we are having probably 28 billion EBITDA in our books. Now, it beats me when you say there was nothing beneficial out of this report. We managed to control the outages, the unplanned capacity losses that were daily happenings. we now have a situation where planned maintenance exceeds unplanned maintenance. That is why we have a reserve of about 3,000 megawatts every day, so that we take care of new maintenance without load shedding. All right? The general tone in the organization is very good as far as I'm concerned. We have a workable organization that was not possible when we came in. So just give us a bit of credit. Work was done based on the 3 months of a very intensive investigation. It set pointers for us. We went out to do so. The minister, unfortunately, is not here because I think she would have answered for herself that you are actually putting words into her mouth.
So, thank you, Ms. Clay.
Thanks very much, Kolani. Yeah, there was a question directed at me regarding the collection and destruction of the particular reports you're referring to. I think as any responsible board member, you would know that when an investigation as sensitive as this is taking place, you don't want iterations of that report floating around. And that was the reason we brought that internally to make sure, because the board members needed to consider that first version that Mr. Kapti spoke about, so that we could go forward with those uncorroborated things that was in the original report having been removed. That was the reason and the decision to bring the reports in so that nobody could then be accused of having pushed reports out, because at that stage, we as a board were facing numerous allegations of things that were being discussed in board meetings going out into the media. So to make sure that none of the board members were exposed to any kind of information that was not corroborated, being filtered out. That was the decision, to collect all of them, and I did that as the chairperson of People and Governance. The Secretariat then destroyed those, and the reports that Mr. Kapti then spoke about, which became the final report, was the one we just then accepted.
I'm not sure if you have checked the terms of reference on which Dendons was commissioned to do the study. Because if you look at what they presented and what was contained in the terms of reference, you will find that they covered all the issues that were of concern.
Okay. Yeah. Can we take one question and then we can deal with one-on-ones from this point, please?
On the one-on-one issue, sir, if you do not mind, you've called us here to present this discussion and this report, and I'm quite comfortable and happy to have this conversation in public. Thank you, Ms. Klein. However, you did not answer the question. On what section of the law did you rely as the board, I'm not singling you out, ma'am, on the board to collect and destroy information that Eskom had paid for that belongs to the company? Not collect and keep, but collect and destroy. Dr. Ngubane, with respect, sir, you have not answered my question too. I asked you, and I have not said Denton's report, who was useless. Lynn Brown said it. You were sitting here all this time and telling the people of South Africa that the report is complete. 2 weeks ago, Lynn Brown said the report is incomplete and is useless. For 2 years, I had been asking you on no less than 4 occasions about the Denton's report. And for 2 years, you have been saying the report is complete, only to find out that the report is incomplete and, in the words of the minister, is inadequate for use by Eskom. Why must the people of South Africa believe you this time around? One question for Mr. Kapti.
Just a minute. On that, look, I've said we will have to have another session with the minister here. Because if you look at the terms of reference, we got what we wanted. We got what we asked for. The other issues about someone having bought what from where was not part of the terms of reference of this. It was to get us information to turn the organization around. So in that sense, the work was complete for our needs. Now, the issue of this report being useless because we did not venture into other areas, that's a different question. It has nothing to do with what we ordered Dentons to do.
With respect, sir, the question I'm asking is not about the terms of reference. You said for 2 years the report is complete, and for 2 years you held on to it. Now that report is not available to the public before legal advice says we must fill in a form to get it. For 2 years you did not fill a form or get legal advice to tell us the report is complete or incomplete. You went ahead and told us it's complete. And now you are now saying, the question I'm asking you, who must believe you after 2 years of you telling the people of South Africa that the report is complete and it was not public, it was not available for public consumption? Now it is. Mr. Kapti, the question I wanted to ask you, how exactly did Dentons conduct its investigations? Did it visit the head office? Did it visit power stations? Did it actually check into people's correspondence that worked here? I'm asking that question because this is what I am aware of. Only on the 28th of May did the board resolve formally to give your company access to power stations. Your report that I have seen, I don't know which version that you're going to publish, says you did not have access to emails. And everywhere I have seen, the report says there was not sufficient time to complete this investigation. So between the 28th of May, when the board met here that night and resolved to give your colleagues access to power stations and still not emails, and the 11th or the 18th of June, Nelson Mandela's birthday, when you were actually being asked to present the final report, was that time sufficient for you, the 3 weeks, to investigate and produce this great amount of work that apparently has helped Eskom to kill load shedding and everything? On the 28th of May, only did you get a board resolving to allow access, your colleagues, to power stations, and not before that. And you completed this investigation without having seen the emails of the people you would have wanted to interview. You said you wanted to interview executive committee members and board and non-executive directors that had been here for the previous 2 years. You didn't get to do that because your client stopped you. Fair enough. Did you have enough time from, let's say, the 29th of May to visit the power stations you needed to visit and compile this great report?
Thank you, sir. Before Ms. Klein comes and then thereafter Mr. Kapti, I just want to maybe possibly indicate that we may actually not be in a better position to actually handle the question around the minister, given the fact that she is also not available here. The premise of what you are saying, sir, is what the minister supposedly said. It's on that basis that I think it's rather a difficult and unfair question for us to answer at this moment. I don't think that, sir, I'm sorry to actually have this, I just want to clarify certain
Let me
things.
answer you. The people of South Africa will believe me because we took them out of a horrible situation and restored reliability of supply of electricity. We still haven't reached our endpoint of having affordable electricity. Electricity cost is still too high. We need to so improve our efficiencies and energy saving that we can actually not ask for a higher tariff. Now, they will believe me because we have delivered something that was very close to them. As far as I'm concerned, the report was complete for purposes of turning around Eskom. The minister might have a view, she's not here, but as I'm telling you, that's what we delivered, that's what was in the terms of reference, that's what the report covered.
Thank you. I would like Mr. Kapti to actually deal with the question around whether the report was incomplete, because you want to know, you want to actually get to the specifics around that. I think he's in a better position to tell us exactly what the status of the report or the investigation is.
Thank you. So, is the report incomplete? In my view, the report is not incomplete. Is the investigation incomplete? In my view, by a long shot. Does, however, and this again is the client's prerogative, does the report and the investigation, as at the date that the final report is prepared, does it adequately suffice in terms of the terms of reference and for what they require it? So the short answer is no, the report is complete. I mean, that is the report of the investigation to date. That's as complete as it's going to get for the investigation to date. Is the investigation complete? Quite frankly, I think an investigation of an organization this large and with terms of reference that was extensive, probably not, no, in my view, not. But again, like I said earlier, an investigation is often as long as a piece of string. I mean, I'll find information and then I have to follow up on that information. So I hope that answers the question. The investigation, in my opinion, is not necessarily complete, but the report is complete. So I think a lot of the questions that you ask will probably be crystallized, in my view, when you are placed in possession of the report, sir.
But also, just on that issue, I've said there are 5 major items that are not yet closed. I mean, it's quite clear that there are extensive issues in that. So I can't see how you infer that we are not doing any work about what came out of Denton's. We are doing work up to now. And if need be, we'll ask them, as I've said, we've already discussed this issue. We'll ask them to come back and give us an evaluation of those areas that we think have been closed, together with what the difficult areas that remain. I mean, what more do you want? What more can you expect from an organization that employs 49,000 people and 27 power stations? What more can you expect? We can't eat the whole elephant in one piece. But the part of the elephant...
We're going to come out of that press conference where Ben Ngubane, the Eskom chairperson, as well as the Denton's law firm representative, are still answering questions back and forth with the media regarding the authenticity of the report and the finality of the report. Well, that's all we have time for from Ground Report and the team. Thank you so much for having tuned in. We'll take a short break. Express Lunch is up next with Abigail Fasahi.